Hello ladies and gentlemen, I am BorderWise and welcome to the From the Depths Particle Cannon tutorial. At the very least of the basics and an overview of what PACs are, what you can do with them, and basically just like the basic ins and outs of them. So, to start off with, what do I mean by PAC? What do I mean by Particle Cannon? Well, I mean this section of the build menu at From the Depths. Right here, particle cannons. So, particle cannons are an energy weapon. They're like, along with lasers, they are the two energy weapons in From the Depths. And unlike laser systems which use engine power directly, particle cannons run on battery power. And there's a few pros and cons to using particle cannons. Let's actually do this so we don't rock around so much. Alright, so a few pros and cons to them. So we'll start with the pros. The first one is that they can do ridiculously high amounts of damage. This one you're seeing right here is tiny, so it doesn't do that much damage. It is quite small. So we go here. See here. Damage per shot is about 1700, which is not a lot, but it fires once every 3 seconds, so it works out quite well. And, the bigger they get, the more damage they do. They're a little bit like lasers in that way, in that they scale with size extremely well. And a very big particle cannon can easily do millions of points worth of damage, regardless of what damage type you set it to. More on that later. It's also hit scan, so you'll notice that as this little hydrofoil is plinking away at the Marauder, yes, it's the Marauder we're shooting at, that beam, that accelerated particle, is hitting instantly. There's no travel time. It's, I guess in terms of what the game is processing, it's not really a projectile at all. It's just damage instantly delivered. And it is one of only 2/3, if you count simple weapons, hit scan weapons in the game. The other main one being lasers. So yeah, that's a huge advantage, simply because it means that anything that relies on speed or erratic movement as a primary method of defense is pretty much helpless against it, because you can just hit it instantly if your detection settings are right. So I will demonstrate right now with some janky nonsense, with some planes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're here. The flying squirrel is quite a janky little thing. And apparently this thing cannot hit it. That's really annoying. Freaking detection changes, man. Okay. Never mind. But if my detection settings were better, they would be able to hit. God, what is wrong with you? And it just shot itself. Great. Great. Don't mind me, then. There we go. Finally managed to hit him. And again. What, were you just teasing me before? Okay, anyway. So, yeah, that is, it's probably also the, oh, there we go. So, they are very good. They're certainly better than, weapons like crams and APS for shooting things that are moving very quickly. Or erratically. And, possibly their biggest advantage is that they have no hard counters. There is no specific mechanic or collection of blocks that are designed to nullify or reduce their damage. So, crams and APS and simple weapons, they have there are things like shields or lambs. Missiles have any number of ways to deal with them. Lambs, Sea-Wiz, missile decoys, like both hull-mounted and missile-mounted. Lasers have smoke and shields, and that goes for the simple weapon lasers as well. Particle cannons really don't have any specific mechanic that makes them that you can put on your craft to reduce the kind of damage they inflict. They just always do their damage. The only soft counters to them is range, so if we go here, you'll see that, say, looking at the short-range lens, you'll see that the damage lost by 100 meters is 6% for the specific lens. All the lenses have slightly different ones. And that is, like, they're not as good at long range as lasers are. If you really stack up the laser optics, you can make lasers very, very effective at long range. In fact, lasers, I think, are by far the best weapon to use at long range because they are also hit scan, and they don't lose as much damage with distance as particle cannons do. So the other soft counter to particle cannons, and I will spawn in a particular white flare craft just to show you what I mean. And actually, I'll get rid of my thing right there, and I'll spawn in. Where are you? The valets. There, and I will spawn in. Let us spawn in just a plain like this, and we'll stick that on there. Actually, no, screw the villas. So here, see, right there, the Velez is armed with a particle cannon. Quite a scary one, actually. It's in here, short-range lenses. But it can't really do, like, anything with the particle cannon if you get out of its range of fire. So, if you are out of that firing arc, and by the way, the firing arc of pretty much all particle cannons isn't very high. In this case, it's 35 degrees. That's both azimuth and elevation. If you get out of that zone, well, then they can't shoot you, and that's basically it. So that does go for any weapon, though. So again, it's a soft counter rather than a hard counter. So yeah, there's that. And while we're talking about things that particle cannons are less than good at, where is it? Here it is, tutorial craft. Let's spawn in this thing, which doesn't have a real name. And let us spawn in just another marauder for it to shoot at, because that's hilarious and cool. So yeah, there are cons to particle cannons, as there are with every weapon in From the Depths. The big one is that particle cannons, well, depending on how you build them, particle cannons can be quite expensive. So if we go here, you'll see that even the cheapest lens right here is 250 material. So you compare that to, say, an advanced cannon firing piece, that's 100, cram cannon is 20, a simple weapon is in its entirety can be 1,000, and even here is like 2,500, 3,500. Like, even missile components are cheaper than this, and laser components in comparison can be damn cheap. So laser combiner is 100. This is 250. Particle cannons they're expensive. So, like, generally, if you keep them small, they're not absolutely bank account breaking. But the split second you start adding lots of extra pipes to them, the cost ramps up quite quickly. They are also quite inefficient, so they do not transfer energy into firepower quite as efficiently as lasers do, or at least that's the overall impression I get from them. You do need a lot of power in order to get them going. So this particular little craft has got two injector engines with almost 3,000 power each. One of them, let's see, one of them is 100% of that power set to powering the main particle cannon, and I think actually it's barely keeping up. So so yeah, they require a lot of power no matter what. And you also notice that it is burning through materials at quite a hell of a rate. Admittedly, it's also because it's got four pretty hefty propellers, making it go super fast. But yeah, particle cannons, they do burn through fuel and materials quite quickly. In fact, nowhere is this more evident. So let's just do this. Actually, let's not spare the marauder. There is a... Where is it? There, where is it? Where is it? White flares, godly, and perforator. There we go. So to give you an idea of just how fast a particle cannon craft can burn through, here is our old friend, the perforator. Which is not burning through materials at all. Oh, there it goes. Yeah, that is, like, do you see that? It's got over 1 million materials and it is burning through what looks like 100 materials per second. And that is because it has a honking enormous particle cannon system up top here, and then 2 smaller ones. So when they scale up, they really burn money like nothing else. And they are also they're not as delicate as they used to be. So if we just get rid of enemy vehicles for a hot second, they are vulnerable to EMP. So if we go over here and look at all these, you'll notice that they all have EMP susceptibility. So the pipes have 50% susceptibility, and the lenses have 30% susceptibility. So they, along with missiles, or missile controllers rather, are pretty much the only weapon systems that can be directly damaged by EMP. Which kind of makes sense because, like, this is a particle accelerator. There's delicate components in there. And a giant jolt of electricity probably would mess with that more than a little bit. So, yeah, so the way that a lot of faction craft and player craft, for the matter, tend to spam radar-guided EMP missiles, they're very likely to hit your PAC turrets if they're exposed, like this one is. And they'll get fried, and that's something to keep in mind. So, let's see, was I smart enough to do this? No, I was not. Alright, so that's why it's actually a good idea to, in your particle cannon turrets, stick surge protectors, just so they're less likely to fry your main firing lens. And speaking of things being damaged, so if we go here, and if we do something like this, where is it? So here is that. If we clip that off and we try firing this thing, you'll notice something important. The thing shoots itself. Admittedly, not doing a hell of a lot of damage, but yeah. So if particle cannon tubes get damaged or destroyed, the particle is not going to come out of the lens. It's going to come wherever the break is. So we go there. Yep, boom. Because I think the idea is that the particle starts at the lens, travels all the way back through the tubing, and then comes back around. So if the line's broken, that particle is going to exit in exactly the wrong place. So this means that along with APS, particle cannons are quite volatile. When they get damaged, they tend to damage themselves even further, so you either want to keep them a little self-contained thing out of the way and away from your other valuable components, or you want to really protect them as much as possible. So, yeah, there's that is another major downside to them. Okay, so having gone over their pros and cons, let's go over their categories. So, to start off with, you'll notice, aside from the prefabs over here, we've got tubes. Particle cannons are actually reasonably simple to put together, certainly simpler than they were before. And so how you do that is you start with a lens of some description, you add pipes of whatever length you'd like. These tubes are all the same, just different lengths. The corners allow you to do corners. And then the tube terminator finishes the particle cannon and makes the pipe safe. And that's reasonably straightforward. Basically, the longer the tube, the more powerful the particle cannon is. And I'll probably do a separate video on clever ways to do Tetris, or rather to do Snake, with that tubing. So yeah. So that's all pretty straightforward. And with the lenses that have 2 inputs, like this vertical lens right here, what the particle input port does is, as in the description of it, it says it attaches back to the particle cannon and allows a full loop between particle cannon outputs, reduces damage loss at range at the cost of base damage. So if you want a long-range particle cannon, as I almost always do, basically it reduces the damage loss to range by 50%, which is very useful. So if we have the short-range lens right here, it basically, well, no, it doesn't work with that. Let's look at the vertical lens. So damage loss per 100 meters is 4%, but if we do this and make sure that it's connected the right way, the pointy bit goes into the back of the particle cannon, just so you know. This thing now would essentially have 2% loss per range, which means it's twice as effective when firing at range, but the max damage and the energy charging rate is, what the? Oh, no, it acts as a tube, sorry. The max damage is reduced to 80%, so reduced by 20%. So, if you've got a really short-range particle cannon that you only ever want to use at short range, like this guy right here, using the input port is probably not worth it. But if you like me and you like using particle cannons at range, despite the fact I was saying earlier that you might not want to do that, the input port can be a great idea. And now we get to categories, which is absolutely fantastic because it means I can demonstrate this category. So to start off with, if you look at the menu here, we're going to start here. The PAC melee lens. Now, as far as in the history of particle cannons being added to this game are concerned, this is one of the more recent additions. Not that recent. The vertical and scatter lenses are more recent, but the melee lens forms a constant beam between itself and other melee lenses on the same turret. Moving into the arc of this beam has deadly consequences. So this thing has a times 20 damage modifier, so in terms of damage efficiency for energy spent, the melee lens is by far the most effective thing. And yeah, so really can do a lot of damage with it. It's kind of one of those things that I still believe this is quite a flashy yet impractical thing to use, along with where is it? The laser. There's a melee laser thing somewhere. Oh, laser cutter. Simply because it's not a super durable component, it's expensive and it requires energy, and you might as well use rams, or drills, or even like steam drills, wherever they are, like here. And, but there is one big advantage to using melee PAC lenses over the things I've just mentioned, and that's because, yes, they've got a weight of 40, and yes, particle tubes aren't exactly light either, but look how heavy rams are. 80. And you need a lot of rams in order to make a decent piston ram or ramming craft. So if you want to make a thruster craft of some kind that just hovers over something and fries it, or if you want something that like a submarine that just drives underneath something and fries it, melee PAC lenses are not a bad idea. So here we have our wee particle cannon thing. This is a super rush job, by the way. And this flies over the target and will start to damage it. This is hardly the best example of a thing to do it with, and you'll see immediately it's doing thump damage and is carving up the Marauder bit by bit. And the great thing about the melee lens is that it only uses energy when it's in contact with something. At all other times, it's not using anything. So it is quite effective if you want to just do essentially bombing runs like this. So yeah, that's they could work very well. And even this incredibly derpy, very cheap, and frankly not very good thing is dealing decent damage. And that times 20 modifier is super helpful. So yeah. And the short range lens we've already kind of covered with our 2-axis PAC thing here. So let's go here and let us look at this lens. So the melee PAC lens, here are the stats for it. Usual kind of story, but the short range lens is probably, I would think of it as like the default short range lens. Because even back when this was a different block entirely, people still used it a lot, simply because it's small. It's only like one block big. And so it means that you can have lots of them all in a row, and it works really well. And also, it also has the next best damage, I guess, modifier of all PAC lenses. So the damage modifier is 1.2, and field of fire is 35 degrees, not super good. It only has one arm connection slot, so you can't use particle input ports with it, which is, like, understandable, because this is the short-range lens, this is more for long-range lenses. So yeah, it does very well. It makes super good 2-axis particle cannon turrets, by the way. This thing is tiny. And this thing is not particularly long. 17-meter long arm, just curving around itself like this. Let's show you this kind of stuff. Moderate overclock, max focus charge time 3 seconds. More on that later. And yeah, so there is one of them, the short-range lens. And next we're going to talk about, wait a minute, short-range lens, scatter lens. So this Marauder is having a horrible time, so we're gonna bring in something with a scatter lens. This is, I made all these things on a stream some time ago, and yes, this thing fires beautiful gay rainbows in Halloween colors. So yeah, this the scatter lens is one of my favorites actually in my mucking around with particle cannons, because it's a reasonable compromise of range, and also you get lots of beams out of the thing. So it's got average damage, so its damage modifier is just 1. And average long range performance, so it's kind of, this is jack of all trades. You can do short range with this, you can do long range, and at higher charge times it shoots multiple beams from every attached arm. So you will notice that with this line of scatter lenses we have in this turret, it fires 3 beams. So like 3 different beams rather than just one big one. And yeah, and the higher the charge time, the more beams you get out of this. So basically, if you go here and set this to 1, you just have this one little thing. But if you set it higher, now you have 2. And if you set it back to 20, now you have 3. And if you set it to 30, you have 4. And so yeah, that's quite a handy thing. It's good for, it's better for certain kinds of damage than others, like impact and explosive seems to do really well with this. So yeah, these aren't super good, by the way. This is just basically a PAC deck gun with just very basic tubing. But yeah, scatter lenses, I'm very fond of them. They're pretty darn good if you just want to saturate something in beams. And the next on the list is the vertical lens, and the vertical lens is probably my absolute favorite. And so we're going to spawn in the thing with the vertical lens. This fella. So the vertical lens is similar to the scatter lens, except not really. So let's go here. So same again, the damage modifier is 1. It's got average damage, long range performance. Main features are a high vertical field of fire and a flat beam spread pattern. So basically the idea is that this is the best vertical field of fire of pretty much any PAC lens. So 60-degree vertical field of fire, up and down. Horizontal field of fire is pretty terrible. And horizontal focus modifier is 0.5, which presumably means it's got... I keep forgetting what focus is. It basically means it gets more inaccurate at the more extreme elevations. No, that's horizontal, sorry. Vertical focus modifier, it gets... Yeah, so this thing is very accurate with shooting up and down. And it's got 2 connection slots, along with the scatter lens that I forgot to mention. So it is quite handy if you are... Well, I didn't actually do it then, that's awkward. Instead, I have used terrible... Actually, no, not that terrible. I've done the wrap thing here. We've run out of Marauders. This will not do. Have more Marauders. We need more. More, I say! So yeah, the vertical lens is what you use basically when you want a turret like this. That it's not 2 axis, it's 1 axis, so it still gets a decent vertical angle of fire on most things. And yeah, so these two I think are my general favorites simply because they're the right combination of having range and damage and just also being easy to place, because this thing is how long? 1, 2, 3 by 2 by 1, and the scatter lens is half of that size, so they're small, very convenient. And last but not least is the sniper lens. So if we go here, this is my first attempt at a front-sider PAC craft with reasonable success. So sniper lens, or long-range lens, I guess you could call it. So this is quite a long thing. It's got a series of 2 loops, and this is the option you get. It is the biggest lens. It is the most expensive lens. It's got the most health out of everything. I mean, look at this. It's got 20,000 health. This thing is not getting destroyed easily. And it has the lowest damage loss per 100 meter of any of these things, all 3 variants of it. And yeah, the damage modifier is times 0.8, so it does 20% less damage than the vertical and scatter lenses, and considerably less damage than the short range and melee PAC lens. And so yeah, this is your long range option. So if we compare the 3, there's 3 variants of this thing, and I will just show them to you there. We have the original one that is asymmetrical and has this kind of ring-a-ring-a-rosy type formation right here. I always hated this thing because it makes the snake or Tetris very annoying. Then we have this new and improved symmetrical design, and thank goodness for symmetry. And then best of all, we have rear inputs, which allows us to actually, you know, keep the tubes behind the thing, so we don't have silly snake things around here. You notice I have just really hurt the balance of this craft. That's fine. I knew that would happen. Whee! So yeah, those are the lens categories, and so whatever, basically you pick the right lens for the job. You want to get melee range, it's the melee. You want to stay at short range, but not quite melee, short. You want to shoot things that are above you or below you, vertical lens. You want lots of beams, scatter lens, and you want to shoot things at long range, use the long range lens. It's pretty self-explanatory, really. And now we get on to damage types. So we're starting to get into the UI of particle cannons. So one of the reasons that particle cannons are actually a bit of a joy to work with is that if it is not working very well, you just go into the menu of the thing and you start messing with these settings here. And a lot of the time, that can be all you need to do. And so to start off with, there are 4 kinds of damage that particle cannons do: impact, EMP, piercing, and explosive shock. So, impact is these particles thump their way into the enemy and create huge impact damage on the first surface they hit. So it's thump damage, basically. So it is the same kind of damage that is done by hollow point APS shells, that's done by missiles, and it's also done by collisions. So with what rams and drills do. So that is, there's a good reason why this is actually the default when you place a new particle cannon. So if I go here, and if I just place a lens, and you'll see here, particle cannon, it's set to impact just by default. Because honestly, this is, I don't know, best all-rounder. Like, it doesn't suffer from the drawbacks of the other 3 forms of damage. And just, if you get the numbers high enough, it hits multiple blocks at once. So if I can hopelessly unbalance this again, I can show you. And Terminator. So I love what I'm doing here. So 18,000 damage already. So it's a pretty long tube, but yeah, like pretty good. And that's 10 seconds. Set that to 20. Overclock that. Okay, so just shy of 80,000 damage, and that took literally seconds to build. Admittedly, I wasn't trying very hard. But yeah, so impact is pretty good. And next we have... EMP. So, EMP is, well, it's just basically EMP damage. So, I actually should have done this. So, if we have this thing, EMP, you'll notice the damage per shot drops a lot. It's down to 22,000, but yeah, it's EMP. It passes through metal and alloy. It damages things which are vulnerable to EMP, like AI components, and heavy armor, and indeed particle cannons, so... If you actually want to... Weirdly enough, one of the best ways to destroy a particle cannon quickly is to use another particle cannon that is set to EMP, with a massive EMP jolt. It's quite ironic, but also quite fitting. So, yeah, it's like... Not much to explain there. And then piercing is a fun one. So, this is a specific type of a damage, which I don't know what the name is for. But yeah, so let's actually give a demonstration of that. And let us go here. Let's just go here. And let us spawn in Marauders. And then let us just muck around with the damage settings on this fella. So we go here, piercing. Piercing is best used in larger particle cannons, I feel. Basically, something that fires lots of beams, but each individual beam can at the very least take out one metal beam. So, let's see here. Are you gonna fire? Yes, you are, and you'll notice 13k damage right there. And it has pierced into the target quite deeply. You can see, what's that? Yeah, that's components going there. This is not the best setup for that because it's only 2 beams and one of them is a lot weaker than the other. But yeah, piercing is, I don't know, it pierces through things. This can be very, very strong. You can absolutely gut craft if you get a good piercing particle cannon, like basically a PAC shotgun. Which is still pretty meta. Back when particle cannons were first introduced, it was by far the best way to use them. So yeah, that is piercing. Can you not blow up my seat? Thanks God, Marauders are so rude. Okay, and if we go here, piercing, explosive shock, and this is just an explosion. It's regular HE damage, which I'm quite fond of. Explosive shock is actually pretty good at lower charge times and smaller pack size. Oh my God, this thing is getting hammered. I don't like it. I don't like it when my craft are not marauder proof. But what was I saying? Oh yeah, so pretty much every damage type has a particular system it favors more. So impact tends to favor bigger jolts and longer charge times. As does piercing, well, as does EMP. Explosive shock and piercing is kind of still favors it, but not as much. Like you can have a pretty decent particle cannon just with rapid fire, piercing, or explosive. But yeah, so damage type, match it to the job that you wanted to do, and that is obvious. And then next we have damage and accuracy settings. So if we look here on the particle cannon and we hit the Q menu. Whoops. So you see here is the things that I've already been mentioning here, there, and everywhere. Charge time is exactly what it sounds. It's how long the thing takes to charge. And if you set it like this, why aren't you firing? Hello? Hello? Oh, it's got its... Stop shooting me, you cheeky bastards. That embarrassing moment when your craft is not marauder proof. There we go. So setting it to very low charge times is... it depends on what you're rolling with, because this is very, very weak. Like 700 and less than 300 damage per shot, not very good. And as it says here, higher charge times are also slightly more efficient, getting extra damage per energy. So energy per shot, but it doesn't actually say there. Wait, energy per second, impact damage for energy. Watch this. You see that the impact damage per energy rises the longer the charge time is. So down here it's 0.38, over here it's 0.52. So let's do that instead. Nice compromise. And we go over here, the focus. So high focus beams do less damage per energy but have a lower spread, which basically means that when the thing fires, the thing wanders less. So let's go here, and if I set the focus to 0, you'll see that those beams are curving a lot. Like, really, they're having trouble hitting anything at all. Admittedly, they do a lot more damage now. So I tend to usually set the focus to 100% because I like my particle cannons to do proper damage at range. But depending on how, like, the distance you actually want to fight and also how many beams you're firing, you might want to set this lower. And overclocking increases the damage done but reduces energy efficiency. So the more this goes up, the more impact damage or energy drops, and the higher the damage goes, and all that. So you'll see there. Excuse you. Yeah. So I cannot the the engines can't keep up with this demand. So I usually set overclocking just to 1 because that'll do the trick just nicely. So yeah, and overclocking in particular is a great way to make a very small and compact particle cannon, like what I keep showing you. Most of the things I've shown are very small, very compact, so I tend to use overclocking a fair bit. And it's also a way to cut down on using these very, very expensive particle tubes that will also hurt you if they get damaged. So that's something to keep in mind. Let's set that back to 10. What's the damage on that? Damage is reasonable. So yeah. And with that, since we've got a bit of extra time, and I'm going to show you just the basics of how to build a particle cannon. Like, I kind of already did that, but we can do that again. So let's go here, template, whoops, no, test fortresses, energy test fortress, there we go. We're gonna go here, and we're just going to build a PAC turret. So, this one isn't gonna be particularly big, and I think we're gonna go for a vertical lens, just because, that is good. And very basic form of Tetris. We're gonna use I'm just gonna use a prefab that I made earlier, 1000 range, and we're just going to, what are we gonna do? So let's do something like this, because I like armored turrets, and I also like turrets that just gonna do something like this, just for laziness. And so, particle cannons, you can basically start building them by just laying down pipe. Be a plumber. Be a plumber, it's a good idea. Alright, so now we've got that, we can figure out what exactly it is we want to do. So let's start, and it also helps to put where the firing piece is going to go. And by firing piece, I actually mean something else. So let's go here. So let's start over here with the Terminator. Actually, no, let's not do that. Let's do this. Just going to have the one. We're not going to be fussy. Actually, it's pretty hard to make a particle cannon that isn't at least somewhat asymmetrical unless you use more than one. So there. Let's make it easier to do this. So snaking back and forth. Don't mind the cars going hoot hoot outside. And Terminator. Now we have a particle cannon of sorts, and that is lovely. So now we've got decent damage. We've got 9,000 damage here. So let's set the focus to that, and let's set the overclocking, and we've got impact, and now we can armor it up, And I actually mentioned in a turret cap tutorial I did not too long ago that one of the things you can do with particle cannons is that you can kind of make a trumpet shape with them. So, got the lens here, and let's just do this. This is a turret cap of sorts. Chunky turret cap. Freaking motorbikes on the motorway. Pretty sure you could hear that. I could definitely hear that. Thanks for messing with my recording, Mr. Motorbike Man. I appreciate it, and so does everybody else who wants to learn about particle accelerator cannons. We all love you. Yes, we really, really do. Cool, so here is our little turret. It's all super lovely. And can we actually do this? I just realized I didn't do this to the same extent that I wanted to. So what you can do is something like this. Let's do that. So you do something like this. You give the thing decent protection, but also you have this kind of tube effect here. I put that around wrong. That's no good. So you see in there, it can fire out. So, and there we go. We've got a particle cannon, just of sorts. Now, definitely this is not the only way to build them. As I said, I will be making another video just on how to do effective snaking with the particle cannon tubes, because I still need to figure that out myself. I've got a rough idea, but I will let you know the good news later. So, in the meantime, let's shoot a Marauder again, because that's so fun. Okay. Also, you need to modify the fire rate, the failsafe. So, do this, and bang! And what have we done to the Marauder? We have shot bits off it, and that's lovely. Yep, 15,000 damage. I like it. I like it a lot. Let us actually set that to something a little bit higher. Let's set that to 20. 30,000 thump damage. Don't mind if I do. And fire. And wait for it. Zap. Okay. And yeah, so that particle cannon is well, okay, that was a little bit underwhelming, but it can make a bit of a mess. Let's actually, just for giggles, set that to explosive, because I like it when things blow up. 12,000 explosive damage in a turret this size, that's, like, that is damage compactness on par with cram cannon, so not bad. Not bad at all, really. So, let's do this. And yeah, that's basically it for this basic introduction into particle cannons. These things are actually quite fun. I used to hate them a lot, simply because I disliked how there were no counters for them. They kind of fill a niche in that way. It's just, when in doubt, if you use a particle cannon, you can make it work. And it'll be, you know, it'll be like, it's... yeah, they have enough weaknesses to make it so they're not objectively better than everything else, because there are specific situations in which other weapons do a much better job. When it comes to raw damage per material, I'd say that cram cannons, APS, and missiles are better. When it comes to shooting things down at range and at extreme angles, lasers are better at that. And when it comes to just compactness, I'd say that simple weapons are actually better. But when it comes to just all-purpose, thing can shoot things in the air, on the water, and under the water. Did I mention that particle cannons are good against submarines? Because they are. Let's go here. Submarines. Let's go here. Dark Hammer. This thing is going to drop under the water, and particle cannon does not actually care about things like being underwater at all. So that's possibly, did I mention that's one of their, I should have mentioned that earlier. They are one of the very few weapons that is good against submarines. The other one being torpedoes and super cavitation APS guns. So yeah, super handy. Come on, blow this thing's face off, would you? You know you want to. Taking a very long time. And you missed. Okay, you know what? That will do. So I hope this guide has been helpful. Thank you all so much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Support me on Patreon or through YouTube membership if you like. It really helps. Thank you to all my current supporters, and I will see you next time in From the Depths. More particle cannon stuff will be on the way. Farewell.